This is the Love Truth Leadership Podcast. Your hosts, Larry Chatterley and Nick Johnson, welcome you on your journey of self-improvement and connection. Listen as they combine their different experiences of life to help you learn leadership is not just a title, but the profound expression of the love and truth you bring into the world. Hi, I'm Nick.
Hi, I'm Larry.
Welcome to LTL, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. Today we're going to be talking about purpose and meaning, and maybe finding purpose and or meaning in your life.
So what does purpose and meaning mean to you, Nick?
Oh, that's a tough question. It's something I feel like purpose is something that I do to define my meaning. I wake up with purpose to go to work. I would say that's a rudimentary purpose. I feel like everyone has that, right? But at the same time, I wake up this morning to come do a podcast, and that's my real heartfelt purpose. Something that I'm excited to do. Something I'm excited to share the story, and that in my life gives me meaning. And I feel like meaning is like a big word, where purpose is what you do to fulfill that big word of meaning. Or meaning is values and beliefs, and it's so much in comparison to what purpose is. A little bit more definitive. It's like it's your end goal. At the same time, purpose can be really big too. My purpose is to make this podcast with you and share a message, and at the same time grow it, make it to where it's something that I am able to do all the time. And then meaning is a hard definition for me, because it's who I am. It's my what, right? It's why I do it, and my purpose is
more of your what?
Yeah, more of my what.
So meaning is more of the why.
Yeah. Meaning is I do this to help improve the lives of others through my experiences.
So it's something greater than yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, meaning is much bigger than I am.
Makes a sense of feeling valued by helping others.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Meaning, I actually was looking it up last night, and I was lost, a little bit, because it was just like, man, this is such a big subject. Meaning, has a lot of definitions in the dictionary. The one that I found that really resonates is the true purpose of something. So my true purpose is my meaning, right? So these words go hand in hand, so purpose is what you do, and meaning is who is benefited is what I really like. I do this podcast to benefit lost people that are having struggles in their life and stuff like that. And then use me, more 100% use my failures, me as my life experience as your example to what to do and what not to do. So that's definitely purpose and meaning for me. But before we get into that subject, I wanted to talk about one thing about last episode real quick.
Okay.
And we had Sam on, and man, I was really happy with how that episode went. It went really well. Little to no editing, which is super awesome. We were talking about discipline, and I actually had this for the episode, and I completely forgot to mention it. And it's about the building a habit, basically, of anything. And I'm relating it to building a habit of working out. And so say you have $100, right? You have $100 in your hand, and you add 50%. somehow you get it, you're able to multiply it and add 50%. You have $150. But then say, if you lose 33% of that $150, you're back to 100. And how that builds that habit of discipline is, if you're trying to build a habit of discipline and you keep working on this habit of discipline with whatever it is, and you get up to where that 100% multiplies into a 150, and then you take let's say you work on this habit for 3 months, and then you take 1 month off, you're back down to where you were, basically. So you're building this habit of working out, you get into shape, you're at that 150% or $150 of, in shape or whatever. And then you take 1 month off, which would, 30%. You're back down to that 100%, which is, I think that's kind of mind blowing. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, so this is the reason why I want to keep doing this and why I don't want to lose track of the habit I'm building or the discipline I want to have in something, is because if I take this little bit of time off, it's more detrimental to the whole encompassing whole, basically, I feel like that's a really big deal. And it's something that I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't talk about in the last episode, but we're covering it now.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. But what about you, Larry? Let's get back into the subject. What's purpose and meaning for you?
Purpose, meaning, similar to what you talk about. I mean, I got to look at my whys, my values, and what's important, and then the purpose is to kind of fulfill that meaning, the goals I set.
Yeah. You've been quite altruistic in your life, though, too, right? So you've built wells in Africa and raised money for doing that. You've done a lot of charity rides, and so that gave you a lot of purpose as well, right? A friend of mine years ago, his name's John, he's the one that got me started in running. And to develop that habit, I think I mentioned this in another podcast, he would show up every morning at 6, and he eventually turned into cycling himself because the running was so hard on the knees, like myself. He mentioned years ago, he says, people do a lot of bike races, but he says he doesn't see any altruistic benefit out of it other than, you can pat yourself on the back and say, hey, I did this, I got a medal, whatever. So he said, Larry, if you're going to do riding, think about a purpose more than just yourself. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Get that motivation. He says, other than just do the ride, how can that benefit? So every ride since then is tied to some type of charity thing that one was the water wells in Africa, and there was a clinic we put over there, and also ALS I rode. My first long distance ride was for raising money. That's Lou Gehrig's disease. And so other future rides, and this last one in France was raising for funds for endangered youth that are in trouble, that have serious problems. Yeah. So everyone, it provides more meaning in the ride than just the ride itself. Exactly. Yeah, it gives you a reason to do it, which is giving that ride meaning at the same time. It's kind of a payback, Yeah. Or pay it forward, I guess. Yeah, 100%. So there goes that gratitude again, right? It's that gratitude. Yeah. Yeah. The pay it forward is so important. It feels like you're creating value in your life, and you feel like you're making a contribution. Yeah. And if you think of all the blessings we have in life, and we live in America, we'll probably considerably have many more things to be grateful for if you think about it, at least from lifestyle, compared to other countries. Yeah. Yeah, I feel fortunate that we can do that, and I feel grateful that we are able to do these podcasts. Yeah, that's for sure. Me too. I feel extremely grateful to be able to do this and to share a message. It's one of those things where, living here is hugely beneficial. It was something I read the other day, and if you have clean water, a roof over your head, food to eat, and there was something else I forgot. I think a pocket change or something. So much money or something. Yeah, and then you're like in the if you have changeable. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, you're the top 6% of the whole world. Yeah, for real. And that's just like, wow, okay. So that puts it in perspective.
Or 8%, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and so when we're very fortunate to be where we're at and to be able to do what we do and have what we have. And I really feel like it sucks for people that can't recognize that. A lot of the times I've been there. Woe is me, 100%. That's why I started talking to you in the first place, right? It was woe is me, what is going on? And I feel, one, that's good that I hit that point because it helped me find a purpose. And so we'll get into ways to find meaning here in just a little bit, find meaning and purpose. But I want to go through a few definitions real quick. So this comes from the Greeks because I was reading last night. It comes into philosophy. There's a lot of philosophers and psychologists who have done a lot of research. And I ended up finding myself, I'm like, reading papers from doctors from Harvard and stuff like that. And I didn't realize that this was such a, researched and thought out topic, for one. I did read that book by Dr. Frankl, and I was super excited whenever I found that article I emailed you. And this actually relates to the Greeks, which, leaders in philosophy and all that kind of stuff, as far as, we still are learning. Most of our philosophy comes from them. So logos can be related to the word meaning. And logos is your reason, your cause, a ground, a thought, or an expectation. And then telos is the word for purpose. And that's your consummation, a closure, results. And the one I really liked was reaching an end or an aim. So that gets back to, in the definition of purpose, the reason why something is done or used, the aim or intention of something. And meaning, like we were talking about, it's a much bigger word. Meaning and purpose are related, but they have different social constructs. Purpose is part of meaning. And meaning is so broad of a concept. It includes your values, your efficacy, and your overall self-worth. Let's talk to our audience a little bit how meaning can be, if you're in a state of not knowing your self-worth. How can someone maybe reach out and find their meaning? And then that will give them their purpose. I feel like meaning has to come first. Right? Like, what is my meaning here? What is the meaning of my life? Through that, you can find a purpose, I feel like. And at the same time, though, if you can find a purpose, you can also find a meaning. So it's kind of a juggling act almost, right? There's this cycle. Right? It's like, okay, so my purpose is this, and now I'm meaning that, and then this is my meaning now. And then, oh wait, this is my meaning now, so my purpose is going to be this. So what are some ways that people can find either one of those, basically?
Well, I think a good method is just journaling. Just writing down your thoughts. And don't...
Telling your story.
Yeah. Don't write it as if you didn't really... It didn't matter if anybody read it. Some people write and they're afraid someone's going to read it. No, write it as if no one was going to read it.
Yeah.
So you can get your true feelings. And as you're writing, start asking a lot of questions. What is it? What do I want life to look like? What about this? Ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And I think those questions are going to lead to some answers. And those answers could be things about you feeling in your element. I've never ever heard of that, where people are in flow. Means you're doing some activity you're so passionate about, time just escapes you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes those things will give you meaning.
Yeah.
And when are you in flow? I call it in your element. Anyway. So sometimes, Nick, maybe you work on something and you're so engrossed on it, all of a sudden you go...
Just like last night, I was sitting there, I got off work about, I would say I left the shop at 5 o'clock.
Right.
And I got home and I got on my computer and I started doing a little bit of research for tonight's episode. And the next thing I know, it's 9:30. Like, not even aware, that time is just flying by. And it was really awesome. Meanwhile, you're texting me all these cameras and stuff, and I'm looking at the camera, and then I'm like, oh, wait, okay. Let me...
I disrupted your inflow process.
No, you're good. You're good. No worries. I'm like, yeah, what about... I really like reading. I think reading can help find a lot of purpose because, it connects us to people you'll never know, right? And it allows us to like sit in other people's shoes and connect to what they're going through. Somebody has this purpose in their life. Wow, I really relate with that. Maybe I can pick up the flag, too, with them and kind of do their purpose, but in my own way. It brings out your imagination, reading does. And I love imagination. I use it daily. I imagine my vision and all that kind of stuff. And you can use your imagination as your purpose. You can start imagining what you want to do. And then if what you're imagining is you start to feel uplifted from that imagination that you're bringing into yourself, make that your purpose, and so one way that you can definitely turn on your imagination is through reading. What do you think about relating to what people have gone through? Maybe seeing that a suffer that you've gone through and don't want to have other people experience that suffer. I mean...
Yeah, we talked about that earlier about suffering. Suffering actually in many ways can be positive because it can produce more deep meaning in your life. It makes you reflect on things that you can have value on. So suffering can be two ways. It can either harden your heart or soften your heart. It can soften your heart for the better, where you have more love and compassion, or it can harden your heart.
Yeah.
Kind of like a boiling water. Put a carrot in boiling water, it gets soft, and if you put an egg in, it gets hard. The question is, you got to decide what are you going to do with that suffering? Yeah,
are you going to be a carrot or an egg?
Yeah.
You're going to like wrap up in your shell, or
go wrap up and be hardened, and then you're not as empathetic, you're not caring, compassionate.
Yeah.
Or you can use that suffering for the betterment, using that suffering to create more meaning in your life,
and maybe experience the fact that, okay, I don't want to go through this again. And you know what? I don't want people to go through this as well.
Or either that, or enhance your ability to help people go through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, everybody has suffering. And Viktor Frankl, as you just mentioned, the author of Man's Search for Meaning, he was incarcerated. He's a psychologist, incarcerated in Auschwitz during World War II. He was able to take that experience of suffering and create an awesome book, and also helped thousands of other people find meaning in their life.
He created logotherapy,
right?
Which is meaning therapy.
Yeah. So It's a good book. It's a tough book to get through because some of the stuff they did is...
Oh, yeah. It's crazy.
Some of the atrocities, I just can't believe some human beings would do that. But anyway, it also provides an interesting viewpoint of how to create more meaning and purpose in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which... also reminds me of another book. You just said do reading. I really like Emily Smith's book on the power of meaning.
Okay.
She's got some good information in there. So I would suggest our listeners here, if they have a chance to read maybe those two books.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, I've listened to the Man's Search for Meaning a couple times now since you told us about it. I think it was last week. And... it's one of those books where you have to go through a couple times. I feel like it's a very thought-provoking book, but it took me a couple listens to really get through. Or like, okay, I see what he's saying. It's something that I don't know if it quite resonates with me yet. So it's going to be one of those ones where I'm definitely going to read it, or listen to it, I should say, a couple more times. I actually went to the library to see if they had it in the library. Just, maybe reading it, it's going to help me a little bit better. Yeah. And it was already checked out, so I reserved it. But that's definitely on the list. And that's the other thing I want to talk about with our audience is reading these books. One read through is okay. I've always been a big reader my whole life. You know, I started out with, whenever I shoot, I was 8 years old with The Hobbit.
Wow.
And that was the first book I've ever read. And that really got me into reading about fantasy and stuff. And I got into Dragonlance Chronicles and just reading all these fantasy books. And reading a fantasy book is good and all because you can understand what's going on the first read through and remember the story, you know, because they're telling you a story. And I feel like reading a book that's teaching you something as far as like self-improvement or finding meaning or something like that, those books you can read through it once and be like, okay, I kind of have an idea. Read through it again. I'm like, okay, I'm getting a better idea now. You know, and so, like I said, I'm on my third third listen to the Man's Search for Meaning, and it's starting to click. Don't be afraid to read a book more than once. What I'm saying here, to really find the meaning in the book that you're reading.
I think if you couple that with journaling, your thoughts about the book also
active learning, yeah. Like
I heard a quote. It says, "When the student is ready, the teacher will arrive." And it was Kilgore who said that when we're in life, when we're really looking for answers, I think then we're ready and we'll see those answers as we study and journal and reflect and meditate and connect with other people and do the gratitude. You know. Yeah,
you could read this book like 3 or 4 times and you're still like, okay, cool, I don't get it. And then one day you are approached with the scenario. Then you're like, oh, wait, I see what the book was saying now. You know, that kind of stuff. I also see that happens to me kind of quite regularly, actually.
See, and so what's happening now, the teacher is arriving because you're ready for it. You're at a point you go, wow, I never saw that before. How come I didn't see that?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you were looking for it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
But unfortunately, most of us, it takes a while to see the answer.
Yeah.
It usually requires, actually, unfortunately, it's many times through the suffering where we find those answers.
Yeah. And that's why I like authors a whole lot, is because they're finding their meaning and purpose and writing these books and teaching the subject, telling their story. So that's another way that somebody can find meaning, is by telling your story. Find curiosity in your life.
Right.
If you see meaning and purpose in your own life and you're able to just tell a story of like meaning and growth, like what I'm actually doing here with the podcast, that's giving me a purpose because I'm able to tell my story of my growth and, you know, ways that I've managed to overcome obstacles and that kind of stuff. You get to see your own strengths and you can use that to help people. Which then again increases our sense of self-efficacy. And that's a word, efficacy, that I'm actually going to look up the definition for you guys real quick, because that's a word that totally stumped me whenever I saw it. The ability to produce a desired or intended result. So, whatever.
Back to purpose.
Exactly. So it's like efficacy can be definitely related to self-purpose.
Can I insert something here?
Larry, you don't even have to ask. Go ahead.
There was a book called Gain Control of Your Life by Robert Bennett. It's out of publication. It was a little awesome book, and I read this back in the 80s, so it was at least 35 years ago.
Okay.
And in this book, he described a behavior model, and that model has been used by a lot of authors. It's used a lot in the Covey Institute's books. So, but I don't know who was the originator of the behavior model. It was in the early 80s when I was reading it. And there was these 4 sections that he talked about. He says there's 4 primary needs that people have in life. Is to live, you know, that's food, shelter, clothing, stuff, you know. And to love and be loved, right?
Yeah.
To feeling valued, that's like leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
And the last was learning and growing. You know, continually grow, learn, you know. And so he says the primary things that you do in life are in fulfillment of those 4 needs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For the most part.
Okay.
So our listeners need to know that what we do every day is in fulfillment. Then there's what our belief system is, kind of the why. I mean, that is the needs that need to be filled. Then we have a belief system, what I need to do to get me to fulfill those needs. What do I have to do every day?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and sometimes those beliefs are correct or incorrect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then this next one is the behavior. Okay, here's what I believe is going to happen. And so I follow up with my behavior, right?
Yeah.
And then the behavior produces results. This was the key thing I got. If the results over a period of time don't fulfill your needs, what does that tell you about your belief system?
Yeah.
It's incorrect.
Yeah.
And the problem is a lot of people, when you see a person do something, you look at their behavior. You go, man, if you do this, you're going to crash or whatever, right?
Yeah,
If you drink and drive, you're going to eventually have some serious problems.
It's some serious consequences, yeah,
as
for
we
sure.
all well know.
Yeah.
And so what happens is people sometimes just focus on the behavior. Get your act together. Do this, do that. But until they change their belief about it.
Or, belief in themselves as
That's
well.
right.
Yeah.
They got to change the belief. And so the things that we've been talking about, gratitude and love and cultivating a different mindset, helps us get better results.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Which is big. Yeah.
So a lot of things in life, people are fulfillment for happiness. And sometimes they get immediate pleasures, but they don't get deep meaning fulfillment.
Yeah.
So, for example, I could go eat fast food all the day. I get a slight pleasure, and I don't eat fast food. But what's the result going to eventually be?
Oh yeah,
I'll be diabetic, overweight,
upset stomach, all that stuff,
cardiovascular problems, hypertension, all those things I don't want. But at the moment, you get a high sometimes on some of the stuff we eat.
Yeah, 100%.
So, for example, a lot of people are struggling with life when it comes to addressing certain things, so they get addicted to certain things.
Yeah.
It's kind of like self-medication.
Well, yeah, you're like, okay, so you're like, okay, I had a stressful day at work.
Right.
Or my life is just stressful and I don't have a healthy way of handling it. So I'm going to go home, I'll crack a beer. That beer wasn't enough. Let me crack another one. And then
another one.
And then another, and then the next day you still have that same cycle because you're not knowing how to handle the stress that you're having. So the next day, okay, now I'm going to have 3 beers to help relieve my stress. And then I had a good friend who suffered severely from alcoholism. I mean, he was my best friend. And I had to quit hanging out with him because it's like, dude, I can't just sit here at your house and just
get wasted.
Let's go do something active. Before, he was institutionalized, and stuff. He spent some time in prison. And which, granted, he did break the law to make that happen, but at the same time, after the fact that he got out, he lost that sense of meaning in his life. And a lot of prisoners really suffer with the fact of being institutionalized, the fact that they've been in this cell for so long, and they're afraid of repeating their same habits or behaviors that got them in trouble in the first place. So they just sit at home and don't do anything and take their meaning and purpose away from their life. And so he just sat there and got drunk every day. He'd put eight beers down to my one and just, took a toll on him. And he ended up committing suicide because of this whole thing. Yeah. Yeah. But at the same time, and I felt our relationship where it started shifting. I was riding my bike every day and having that meaning in my life. Like, I want to get up early and go ride this trail. So that gave me a purpose, and that gave me, I am a mountain biker. It gave me a title, right? Basically, which gave me a purpose to do. And he resonated with being a prisoner. While that's his meaning and his purpose, it wasn't healthy for him. We need to start looking at turning those hurts and feelings that we have, like he was suffering, into something that's more of a guidance, I feel like. And if he would have reached out for that a little bit more, he wouldn't have been down that path. Yeah.
I think, Nick, at least for me, and I'm sure this is with others as well, one of the most therapeutic things for me, I guess, is making a difference in the lives of others. So what's good therapy is like volunteering for something.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when you start thinking, It's great self-help by helping others.
Oh yeah, 100%.
When you're helping others, you start reflecting differently and seeing things differently.
And then
and then that creates more meaning in your life.
Yeah.
So when you see, and some of these people, when they've got out of prison, I'm not saying a lot, there's a few, you read their stories, there's some people who've come through some pretty tough times.
Oh yeah.
And they had this epiphany. They go, whoa, I can make a difference. And some of them can actually become great leaders, but like Gandhi, he went through some tough times.
Yeah.
But had a profound influence in the people in India and getting free of the British Empire. But sometimes we can do something very powerful for our life. We just have to make a choice to do it. How do we say? Self-medication of the different facets out there, that just it keeps you from moving forward in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
So then you need to question yourself, hey, how do I need to see things differently about myself? That's back to journaling. And I read a book years ago. I can't remember the last name of the author, John Kranick or something. He wrote 365 letters. He's an attorney in California. He was at a point in life that he was very unhappy.
Uh-huh.
Extremely so. And for some reason, he had this insight to write a thank you note that people made a difference in his life.
Okay.
And he wrote a note every day for 365 days. People
just thanking somebody.
Someone, even if it was at the Starbucks and the lady gave him a smile and just treated him, with respect, he'd write a letter to that person. But he started writing people and teachers and a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And when I read this book, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, I started writing, and I wrote probably 100 plus letters. Unfortunately, there was a bunch of people I wished I wrote a letter, but they'd passed away.
Yeah. So do it before it's too late.
It's too late. I thought, oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, and so he found that totally changed his life. He got out of this, slump of being, woe is me and victimization, because that leads to usually some form of self-medication.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Drinking or drugs or whatever it is,
whatever
gaming, whatever the addiction is.
Exactly.
And so that got him out of that element, that thank you, that gratitude, and he started writing it. So I found it very rewarding, and particularly there was one of my professors who was still alive, and I've heard through a friend it had such a profound impact on him because he'd never had a student ever write him a letter.
Really?
Yeah, gratitude. He said it's the first he'd ever seen.
Yeah, that's another story that I was...
50 years later, it took me to write it, and he was one of the few that were still alive, but unfortunately, a lot of them...
And so that brings us into another way to find meaning in your life, and it's listen to what other people appreciate about you. And I was reading a story about this teacher who... He was teaching troubled youth it was some special school, right? Why am I even doing this anymore? I don't feel like I'm making an impact, like I'm making a difference. And he had this student who reached out to him 5 years after she graduated from the school and wrote him a letter and said, hey, listen, I want to let you know how much I appreciate what you've done for me in my life, that you were the teacher that guided me and showed me how to be a better person and this and that, and actually asked this teacher to walk her down the aisle for her wedding. That reignited his purpose. Okay, I'm a teacher for troubled youth. And that reconnected him to something that he was already doing. He found his purpose again by somebody thanking him. Now that's something that can be sometimes tough because I have a hard time with this as well. I went to go pay gratitude towards my dad on Thanksgiving, and I love my dad to death, and I can tell him all this stuff. But whenever it comes to being, open in this way with him, it's a little tough. It's going to be one of those things where that subject itself, hearing what people appreciate about you, that's going to be one of the hardest ways to find purpose and meaning. Because I don't feel like a lot of people are really open with how much they appreciate other people. Or hey, you made this impact on me in my life, and I want you to know that you've made this impact, and I appreciate you for it, or something like that. When it comes down to it, that's where it relates into the other way to find meaning in your life is your community that you're in. If you're in the community or you're in a social structure where your purpose is, or your meaning, or what you're bringing to people is not being noticed or, acknowledged, maybe try to find a different community where they're a little bit more open and a little bit more acknowledging of who you are as a person.
So I'd say the best self-help, one of the best self-help is help others. As you help others, it'll help you establish and find more meaning and purpose in your life.
And then you're also going to be surrounded by people who are also doing the same thing.
Same, like-minded. So I'm just saying, if you're anybody out there listening is struggling in life, go find some cause. Go help someone. Go do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever that may be. My son one time, he was a student abroad for a semester, and he went into some of the countries like Egypt and Ethiopia.
Uh-huh.
And he said it was a huge paradigm shift. He had no idea people lived the way they did.
I really like this quote. It's the nobility of our purpose reflects the company we keep. If you're finding that you're like, okay, I'm lacking a lot of purpose in my life, start looking at the people around you. What are they doing?
Yeah, are they lifting you up or pulling you down?
Exactly.
It reminds me of the crab story about there was this bucket and the crab it wasn't very big, and this guy come up and said to the fisherman, he says, hey, the crabs they're going to get out of that bucket. It's not very high. He says, no, they won't. He says, why? Well, because as one crab tries to get up over, the other crab will grab it and pull him back down. And so the point is, if you want to change your mental state of mind, maybe you want to think about who you hang around with.
Yeah.
Are they pulling you down, or are they uplifting you up?
And the people that we hang around with are closely tied to our identity as people.
Right.
So if you're sitting here asking yourself questions about these people, like, what do you have in common with the people you hang out with? Who are they trying to be? What impact you see the people that you're hanging out with are having on the world? Is it a positive impact? Can you help them making that positive impact? And then, like, what do they need from you? And then can you give them what they need? And if your answers to those questions don't really bring inspiration, or you're sitting there asking those questions and you're like, whoa, okay, what's going on? These people are actually completely negative towards me, or this is just a negative environment. Start to question your identity. I identify as a nerd 100%. I like playing board games, Magic the Gathering, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, that community is kind of a negative driven community. It's all about me. Can I win? That kind of stuff. And so I don't really generally like to associate with that community too much, because, I mean, granted, I'll play board games and stuff with my friends. That's what we did on Thanksgiving. Whenever I went to Friendsgiving, after we all ate and everything, we sat around and played board games, but it was more of in a positive light. And whenever you go to like a game store or something, and you don't know the people you're playing with, or you do, but they're at the same time, this is like 100% their driven purpose in life is to play games or play board games, that kind of stuff. Not all the time. It's about a 60% rule. About 60% of them are extremely negative. This is all they have going for them. And so, again, start questioning whether or not the people that you're surrounding yourself with are a positive impact on your life. And then take a look at your identity through that. Like, I identify as a game-playing nerd, but do I identify with it so much that I'm going to go hang out with negative people all the time? No, I don't.
Depending who you hang with depends, like you say, it defines your identity. And maybe you have to rethink that. It's back to that belief in behavior.
Yep.
And the results you want in life. If you're not getting the results you want, those needs aren't being met, then you need to question your belief system, what you believe about yourself and what you believe in others.
Yeah, exactly.
So it becomes a journey of self-discovery, and that self-discovery is through the principles we've talked about.
Oh, yeah.
The gratitude, the journaling, the pay it forward, making a difference.
Yep.
That journey.
Gratitude, altruism, yeah.
That helps you reestablish the way you think about yourself. That elevates you better, and so it creates more fulfillment. Life becomes more rewarding.
And then find something that you can maybe have awe in, as well. Like, what brings you like, wow, that's really cool. This is super awesome. I enjoy this a whole lot. I can imagine, some kids as a youth, they find awe in space and they're grateful that they have the opportunity to chase this as a dream. And then next thing you know, they're working for NASA. So that's one of those things where like, and if you're able to hold on to like what brings you inspiration, and then build that gratitude towards that inspiration, you're on the right path to finding purpose and meaning in your life for sure. Man,
I think you said it all there, Nick.
Yeah,
just remember to just think about and write down and journal about things that you learned. Get a passion for learning more.
Yeah.
And self-reflection.
Yep.
Work on meditation.
So Bob Proctor said, and he's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
He says the world belongs to the learning, not the learned. So if you already think you know what's going on, and you're already set in your ways, and you're not willing to expand your mind, you're stuck. And so the people who want to keep learning through life and want to keep building themselves up as people, those are going to be the ones who will end up owning the world.
I think that creates a sense. I think people, when they have a sense of humility, that's what suffering does. It makes you more teachable.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're more teachable, you're learning. But pride, I think is the antithesis of humility, is the thing that creates more stumbling blocks. Like, it's the people think they know everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or whatever. And that becomes a huge stumbling block to them.
Yeah.
So hopefully they, through their suffering, they'll find more meaning in their life. And with that meaning, they create more purpose.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back and forth. As you find more meaning, you create more purpose. As you create more purpose, that feeds more meaning.
Exactly.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's...
In fact, most of the time in my consulting world, the biggest problem people had is they didn't know exactly where they were headed. They'd always say, "Well, tell me how to do it." Well, how to do what? Usually it was just more money.
Yeah.
Well, if I make more money, that'll solve all my problems. Well, maybe.
Exactly.
May not. I said in most cases it actually doesn't. Most people say, "Well, yeah, it would." I said, "Well, possibly."
Makes life easier.
Makes easier.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's going to create more meaning in your life.
Or more happiness.
Or happiness, no.
Yeah, no, it's not going to, no, not at all. It definitely makes stuff easier. But at the same time, it's like, okay, cool, it's easy now, but I'm still hanging out with the same people. Or, I'm still repeating the same bad habits.
Yeah, you don't want to live a Groundhog Day.
No, not at all.
I would suggest, if anybody hasn't seen that movie, go see it. It's got a good meaning, because most people live Groundhog Day. They want.
I was in one.
Yeah, you want different results, but
I'm not changing my habits.
But I'm not going to change the way I see myself.
Or my pursuit of things or anything like that. So we're going to recap real quick. Ways to find meaning, just a few. There's a lot more than this. Right. Reading would be the first one, I feel like. 2 is going to be your hurts. Turn your hurts or other people's hurts into your purpose or meaning. Listen to what people appreciate about you. Find or build a community. Tell your story. I feel like that's one of the biggest ones. And then even bigger than that is cultivate gratitude, awe, or altruism. Start writing your gratitude. And as we've mentioned before, and we'll mention again and again and again, gratitude is the most powerful word that we're going to even ever talk about, because it brings in a lot of different change in your life. And we understand that it's hard. And trust me, just from somebody who's new at practicing gratitude, it's hard to start, or what you can be grateful about. Start with simple things, material subjects. I'm grateful that I have a house, I have food, I have water. Just start with little stuff. Altruism, go volunteer in your community. Go to the local task force that you have on their food bank days or whatever that you can do. Pick up trash, something like that. And then awe is going to be what inspires you. What do you find joyful? What really makes, your brain explode with, I'm so excited about this. I can't wait to do it. That's why I have a lot of awe with the podcast. Whenever I'm done editing an episode and I finish listening to it, I'm like, yes, I do a little celebration. Like, this is where it's at. I have my impact. From there, back to gratitude again. I want to touch on a subject, and I feel like the more I've been practicing gratitude, the more that I realize that I've been practicing gratitude in my life. And that's really what's helped me, get over my struggles. And I feel like a lot of people do practice gratitude and don't recognize it, that they're doing it. Larry, I get migraines, right? And I'll have a migraine wake me up at 2 a.m. And the number one thing that gets me through that migraine is sitting there going, at least I'm alive to feel this pain. It's like, thank you that I'm just so grateful I'm alive that I get to feel this pain, because otherwise, if I wasn't alive to feel this pain, I wouldn't be able to meet Larry on Sunday morning to record a podcast. But yeah, I think we're going to close out there.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, Larry?
All I would say is I recently read a book called Wake Up with Gratitude, and it's by Christine Nelson, I believe. It's a great book. If we're talking about reading, if they want to read, she's a survivor of cancer, but I really like the way she approached the subject. And I would also say for those who feel connected to God, to pray about.
Yeah.
Prayer of gratitude is very important.
Or whatever your higher power is, for sure. Just put it out there to whoever, just send a thanks out, for sure.
Well, thank you for you guys listening today, taking the time.
Yeah, we're really excited about next week. I am bringing on my cousin. She's a breast cancer survivor. And she's going to have a lot of cool stuff to talk about. So tune in for next week as well. Well, I'm Nick.
I'm Larry.
And this is the LTL Show. Thank you for listening.
Have a grateful day.
I want to leave you with a glimpse into what's coming next week. Larry and I will delve into the transformative power of a positive attitude, featuring a special guest who holds a dear place in my heart, my cousin, Christy Pinkney. Join us as we explore Christy's incredible journey as a breast cancer survivor, discovering how she harnessed the strength of a positive attitude to not only overcome adversity, but also turn it into a powerful platform for education. Her story is a testament to the resilience that love, truth, and a positive mindset can bring into our lives. Until then, stay inspired, lead with love, and always seek the truth in your leadership journey. As always, Larry and I greatly appreciate you, and thank you for listening.